thank you for joining us for this next in our series of Safety is Personal. The National Safety Council's mission is to make sure we keep people safe from the workplace to any place. And everyone wants to be safe at work, in our communities, on our roads, wherever they happen to go. And everyone has a safety story, the thing that made safety important to them. And this is our series where we talk to leaders about what is their safety story and how did safety become important to them. And today I am just honored to be with Representative Buddy Carter. He is from the House of Representatives and in his 5th term. And he also, for 32 years, was the owner of Carter Pharmacy, Inc. So I am just really pleased today to bring him to this series and to be able to have a discussion with you here today, sir. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
As I said at the outset, we like to hear people's safety story. What caused safety for you to be an important part of your life?
Well, obviously, as a practicing pharmacist, that was very important to me. But the amount of illicit fentanyl that's in our country right now is something that's very concerning to me. And as a member of the Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee, I've said as my goal, one of the things to do is to make sure we address that situation. Obviously, we need to stop the flow, but we also have to have tools in our tool chest to be able to address that situation that exists here within this country. 200 people every day dying as a result of fentanyl poisoning, and that's what we've got to address. And one of the ways that we can address it, and one of the tools that we can have in our tool chest, is naloxone. And naloxone, if used quickly enough, can reverse the effects of fentanyl and actually save lives. And that's one thing I've said as my goal, is to try to get as much naloxone out there as we can. And I tell people all the time it ought to be in every emergency box in America. Those of us who are old enough to remember syrup of Ipecac, whenever it used to be in the medicine cabinet, that's the way naloxone should be now.
Yeah, you're speaking to my heart here, sir. As a pharmacist, though, and as a representative in our Congress, how has that perspective, and I know how passionate you are on the health and well-being of everyone in our country, how has that perspective brought a specific lens to keeping people safe and your role in Congress?
Well, keep in mind, as a practicing pharmacist, a retail pharmacist on my own business, I was the one who had to go to the counter and tell the senior citizen how much their medication was. I was the one who watched them try to make a decision between buying their medicine and buying their groceries. I was the one who had to go to the counter and tell the mother how much her child's antibiotic was going to be and watch her in tears as she tried to figure out how she was going to pay for that antibiotic. I said as my goal and my mission when I came to Congress, and before then when I was in the Georgia State Legislature, to do something about that, to try to bring prescription drug prices down. And I focused on that. And really we need to stop the vertical integration that exists within the drug pricing chain. And if we can do that and cut out some of the middleman and have the pharmaceutical manufacturers do their part, which they will, then we can bring down the prescription drug costs. Look, all of us in Congress, all of us in America want the same thing, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent. We want accessible, affordable, quality health care, and that's what we strive to do.
And we want people going home safe at night, right?
Absolutely.
Every night. Well, thank you for sharing that. Healthcare is a variety of things, but one of the things that I know has been brought home for you is this issue of our opioid epidemic in our country, and you talked about 200 people a day. That's literally 2 airplanes as if they crashed every day, losing their life to an unintended overdose, what we might call a poisoning, right?
Right.
How do you look at that issue, and how has it touched you personally? You talked about fentanyl in our nation, but clearly there's a safety story that fuels you behind this issue.
Embarrassingly, I was at a town hall meeting, and I referred to it as fentanyl addiction. And a mother stood up and corrected me, as she should have, and said, "No, sir, it's not fentanyl addiction." She said, "My son took 1 pill and he's dead. It's fentanyl poisoning." She was right and I was wrong. And as a pharmacist, I really did feel bad about that. But we've got to address that. And again, naloxone is one of the tools that can be in our tool chest. That's why I proposed legislation that would require every school in America to have naloxone. Wherever you see a defibrillator, wherever you see a fire extinguisher, you ought to see naloxone. Because as I say, if used quickly enough, it can reverse the effects of fentanyl.
It's an emergency response tool.
It is.
Yeah, for sure. You talked about your campaign to have it in schools and the legislation. Recently, you also, and I think in 2023, said it should be in our congressional buildings. It should be where you come to work every day. Can you talk a little bit about how that intersection comes to play in our workplaces?
Well, it does. It's important in the workplace, and certainly it's important here in the halls of Congress. We this is America's home, and this building belongs to America. We have a lot of visitors here, and we need to have it on hand in case it ever needed to be used. All our EMSs now are carrying it and using it, and that's very important. We have made some progress. I do want to stress that, because I'm often critical of the FDA, as I should be, but I have to compliment them, because before it was only less than a year ago where you had to have a prescription to get naloxone. Right. And I led a letter to the FDA encouraging them to make it where you can buy it without a prescription. And to their credit, they did that. They moved it to the over-the-counter status, to where people can just go into the drugstore and buy it now and not have to have a prescription. That makes it more accessible.
Yeah, that over-the-counter designation was huge.
Very
and I
much.
think for workplaces, essentially, that was a game changer. Because now, as you've talked about, every first aid kit should have it as part of its standard equipment. And believe me, we're working on that. But that just means it's another tool that has to be there and can be there in a very easy way. So thank you for pushing all of that. I'm sure we're where we are in part by your urgency. You. So thank you. But as you think about folks around this nation trying to keep themselves safe, mm-hmm. and you're urging them to have this on hand, what's a recommendation you would have to your constituents, the folks in the country, moms, dads, anyone who might be listening?
Well, everybody thinks, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Well, you never know who it's going to happen to or where it's going to happen. Look, I carry it in my backpack everywhere I go. I have naloxone on. Thank God I've never had to use it, but if I do, it's there, and I will use it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was at the Georgia Poison Control Center just this week, and was talking to them about it, and they said, when do you use it? You use it anytime you think it may be a problem, because it's not going to hurt them.
I love that.
So, it's a big part of what we need to be doing these days.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for what you've done to lead here, to have your voice, to bring that pharmacy perspective and the chance that you've had to touch people in our communities that this has been affected with. It really does, I think, change lives. And with 200 people dying a day, everybody's life is going to be impacted by this national crisis. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And thank you all for joining us in this next in our series of Safety is Personal, addressing some of the biggest safety challenges and hearing from leaders of why safety is personal to them. Safety impacts everyone. To hear more conversations and see our other episodes, go to safetyispersonal.org and watch on demand.